arrow on record. So,
Okay.
yeah.
But when you hear that, that means we're official. We all have to speak like the Queen's English now, or the King's English it should be at this point. But I hope my internet is working well. I hope you're all well wherever you are in the world. Maybe actually we get a chance just briefly. We don't often get this opportunity, but just to unmute and maybe say, already Alicia has explained where she is in the world, but where you might be in the world right now, because I am happy to be in Madrid on a sunny afternoon. And maybe we can start with Merida and do a full circle. Merida, Marilyn, Barbara, and then Donna, if that's okay.
Okay, well, I'm joining from Monterrey, Mexico, and it is also it's a sunny morning today.
Good morning.
And I'm in Kingston, Washington, which is south of Vancouver, Canada, north of Seattle. And it is just, the sun is just coming up right now. So it's early morning.
Thanks, Marilyn.
Good morning. I'm in the Great Lakes region. I'm in Appleton, Wisconsin. And Appleton was one of the first 6 cities to be a compassionate city. I don't
Thanks,
want to
Barbara.
talk about the weather because we've got storm warnings.
Oh.
Well, good luck with that. Donna.
Good morning, good afternoon, the other side of the world. I'm in northern Idaho in the beautiful mountains and lake of Coeur d'Alene. It's a French name, so if you need some spelling, I'll put it in the chat, but I'm in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and it's just like super early in the morning. But I'm up, the squirrels are up, and I think the sun's trying to come up too. We're actually going to have over 40 degrees. So look, short sleeves, Marilyn. Whoop, whoop. No scarf this morning. And
Over 40 degrees Fahrenheit, I presume, because if it was 40 degrees for Alicia or myself in this part of the world, we wouldn't be on this call, we'd be in a swimming pool somewhere. But
yeah, right. And Alicia, where are you? I'm sorry, I didn't get to hear that.
So I'm in England, yeah, just outside of London. So yeah, not very warm here.
Yeah. And what part?
So in a place called Hertfordshire.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. I have friends that live in Leighton Buzzard.
Oh wow, yeah, that's not far.
Yeah, in Stevenage. So yeah, well, Stevenage moved to Wales.
Stevenage is about 20 minutes drive from my house.
Oh, okay. Are you north?
Yeah, north, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Brilliant. I'll be over shortly. I know exactly where you are.
There you go. That's how it works.
Wow.
That's how it works. I mean, that cliche that we often use of being a small world, it really is true in many respects, but particularly when we're exploring themes like education for resilience, or today we're using the term psychological fitness, and Alicia can explain that a little bit more. But any education that's working, with the similar goals in mind, it's smaller and smaller and smaller, which can be a nice thing, but hopefully that ground can get bigger and bigger, and we won't all know each other. But maybe before we jump in, Alicia, if it's okay, we could just even have a little bit of a connection to maybe your own personal journey, if that's all right, to the work that you're doing right now, because I think that's always a nice starting point. I do say I'm a bit selfish today because I have a little bit of an insight to bounce forward, and I've had the privilege to get to know some of the, not all, but some of the content, and meet some of the facilitators over the last year or so, and even get used to some of the reframing of terminology like psychological fitness as opposed to compassionate education or resilience education. And so when you go on your website straight away, you see certain things jumping out at you. But what I'm really curious about today, and I'm sure we'll get to it in this sort of formal presentation, and if not, we can leave it to the questions afterwards as well. But it's how bounce forward, even with their name, bouncing forward rather than bouncing back a lot of the time, how you've come out of the last 3 years and sort of changed things quite dramatically in terms of funding structures, the private and the public, how you manage that and navigate that, how you've moved from sort of all in person at one point to maybe a hybrid, and I'm curious to know how that is right now, because I haven't checked in for some time, but a lot of your programs switched, and generally how it's all going with the education paradigm shifting and changing quite dramatically in terms of social emotional learning. So we're in for a treat for sure, but maybe if you could start with your own personal connection to the work that you're doing today.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So yeah, my name's Alicia. It's so nice to be here with you all, and thanks for having me. So I've been with Bounce Forward. I'm project manager for Bounce Forward. I've been with Bounce Forward a few years now, and really, I mean, I want to say that I stumbled upon Bounce Forward by chance, but maybe fate. I'm not sure which one. But so my background was always in events. I used to run various events across Europe, and then we got hit with this thing called the pandemic, which, you know, took us all by surprise. And obviously events, I think, was probably one of the first things that got, you know, completely shut down and stopped happening. So you know, I really had a chance, I guess, to think about what I was passionate about, what I really wanted to focus on. I've always been, you know, through my own kind of life experiences, I've always been really interested in kind of how we look after ourselves, both physically and mentally, and then how the two play a part in each other. And so I, at one point in my life, was thinking about maybe teaching. So I've always kind of had the angle of, you know, working with children and young people. Anyway, so done a bit of research, came across Bounce Forward, you know, saw that they you know, support children and young people, but also do this whole thing around kind of psychological fitness, or what we call it now. So yeah, got in touch with them. Initially was volunteering, just kind of helping out wherever I could, and then after about 3 months of volunteering, just never left, basically. And you know, here we are, what 3.5 years, I think, down the line. So yeah, just I think I've seen it kind of develop a lot over the last 3 years, even down to, like Shane was saying, down to kind of our delivery model and how we now deliver our work, whether that be with schools or with parents. And I think also have seen the education sector go through lots of ups and downs, and you know, I think it's a difficult time. As in the, I mean, I can't speak for globally, but I think, you know, in the UK specifically, I think the education sector is struggling. We have burnout rates amongst teachers kind of, you know, hitting highs, and also the need for, I think, what we all do, you know, is never been more important. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey, I guess, seeing it to get to where it is today.
Brilliant. And certainly in 3 years to go from volunteering to project manager, it's a good example as well of, if you're passionate about something and you believe in it, then it can happen, it can work. And I should say welcome to Andrea as well, who in a nutshell, from what I know of Andrea, is from Colombia originally, spent years living in the United States, and is now working in education in Mexico, and heavily connected to some of the themes that we're going to be talking about today as well. So thanks, Alicia, for your own personal intro. And one of us can share, any of us can share, but if maybe we want to get into the presentation mode, and then we can go into informal conversation afterwards with questions and conversation.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I will share my screen. I've got a few slides. I'll try not to make it last too long, but hopefully it's nice and interesting for you. So so my plan is to just give, you know, an overview of Bounce Forward. Sorry, just sharing my screen. Is that working?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, perfect. So yeah, I'll just kind of tell you a little bit about who we are, what we do, why we do it, and then yeah, we'd love to discuss and take any questions. So Bounce Forward. Predominantly what we do is we support people to lead mentally healthy lives. So we focus on children and young people, but we do that through the adults that are around them. So whether that be teachers, education staff, parents, carers, you know, whoever the adults are, we kind of start with them. We truly believe that when it comes to mental health, prevention is better than cure, and we really think that there needs to be more focus on, you know, more focus and investment in prevention. And ultimately, what we're doing, I guess, is disrupting education. So we're questioning the purpose of education. We want to put psychological fitness as a priority at the same level as other academic subjects, and make sure that, you know, ultimately when students are leaving school, that they're prepared for a life beyond it. Oh, sorry, trying to move it. Oh. Okay, it's back. Okay, so our mission is to give school communities training skills and the resources they need to build young people's psychological fitness. So when we talk about school communities, we're talking about inside and out of the classroom. So we have our Bounce Forward curriculum that is taught in the classroom, and then we also have Bounce Forward programs for parents and carers to embed these skills at home as well. And so psychological fitness, as Shane said, we've kind of recently taken on this term because, you know, we have a lot of skills that we teach, and we wanted a term that kind of encompasses, you know, a lot of them skills. So overall, it's an umbrella term that combines mental resilience and emotional well-being. And over the years, we've done a lot of work with behavioural scientists at places like the London School of Economics, you know, people that study success behaviours. And what we know from their work is that, you know, they're confirming that skills such as mental resilience, emotional intelligence and emotional well-being are key attributes that are going to be needed for success. You know, they're saying in the future, but, you know, basically now and in the future. And, you know, if we think about technology, for example, we know that technology is, you know, going to be able to do things way faster and smarter, you know, than we can. But what it can't do at the moment is, you know, care about the things that we care about as human beings, or drive the, you know, drive things forward that matter to human beings. So it's really important that, you know, that we're teaching this stuff, and ultimately to have mental resilience and good emotional well-being, it means that we can deal with life better, whether that be work, school, depending on what stage you're at in your life. We're able to adapt and respond to changes around us. We're filled with more hope and optimism and compassion for ourselves and for other people. And ultimately what we want is young people to feel like they can be proactive agents for change, so the change that they want to see in the world. So I've touched on this a bit already, but what we do, so we train teachers to be able to teach evidence-based lessons in the classroom. We work with parents and carers to raise psychologically fit children. And, you know, going back to the adult bit is, you know, the adults are really important. So we know from our research that the adult's role in helping children and young people to be resilient is absolutely vital. And that also, you know, it's not just what they say that matters, it's the behaviour that they model as well, which is why we start at the adult level. So talk to the experts. I would say we don't say or claim this enough, but we definitely are the experts in what we do. You know, we've got years of experience. We've been involved in huge research projects that's got us to where we are today. Our proven impact with over 1 million students. And someone actually described us the other day as a hidden gem, which I love. So I've stolen that term and I keep using that now. And our target over the next 5 years is to reach 2 million children and young people. So the problem, which I guess is the bit of the why bit, right? Why do we do what we do? So these stats, I mean, they speak for themselves. These are UK-based stats, by the way, but, you know, £100 billion a year is spent on mental health problems. Wellbeing is at its lowest it's ever been. In a recent study, 1 in 6 children have a mental health problem, 1 in 9 are unhappy at school. And then this strong correlation between childhood and adulthood. So 50% of adult mental ill health problems start at the age of 14. So, you know, it's really important that we're teaching this stuff from that younger age group. And then there's this other problem, which is the hidden children. So about 10% of a typical class of 30 children are kind of high functioning but high anxiety students. So for example, and you know, these students typically go unnoticed. So you might have a smaller group of maybe a bit more disruptive or unhappy students that are a bit easier to spot and hopefully get the provision that they need. But this 10% who are hidden, you know, the damage that they cause to themselves through this non-manifesting anxiety is huge. And, you know, that's really why we do what we do in the way we do it. So we, you know, we implement and teach this in a universal way in the classroom, alongside other academic subjects in the core curriculum, to make sure that it's, you know, put as a priority, and to make sure that we're reaching that 10% of hidden kids as well. And this is just a nice quote from Lord Richard Layard, who is a lovely friend of our organisation. But, you know, as we know, there really is no conflict between wellbeing and academic success. We know now that happy children learn better. And I think going back to that correlation between childhood and adulthood, you know, the best determining factor for good mental well-being as an adult is the state of the brain at the age 16. So, you know, it's really important that we're implementing, you know, how to look after yourself and these good coping mechanisms and skills from a young age. So these tools for living, these are, so throughout our programs, we have 8 skills that we teach throughout. And through these 8 skills kind of help us to get the best outcomes of everyday situations, if you like. And then by using these skills, we build strategies and habits, which then build our competency in these tools for living that we call them. So I'll just run through these really quickly, but, you know, flexible and realistic thinking, so important for mental resilience. So, you know, being open to different perspectives, looking for evidence in our thinking. Why do we think that, you know, why do we think that happened? And making sure that that's wedded to the reality of the situation around you. Human connections. I mean, we all know more than ever, I think, after the last few years, that human connections are so important. That kind of being able to reach out, being able to build empathy and care for others, which ultimately increases our overall happiness as well. Hope and optimism. So setting realistic goals, having the belief that you can achieve those goals and remaining optimistic throughout. Self-regulation, so understanding your emotions, the range of emotions that you feel, and then the impact of them. And then also this impulse control, which I think is so important, especially now, because I think we're so exposed to so much information, and anything we want essentially is at our fingertips. And I think that skill of impulse control, especially for those generations coming through, is super important. And self-awareness and compassion. So understanding myself, what is normal for me, and when I deviate from that, and ultimately build then from that, you know, if I understand myself, I can understand others, and then building compassion for myself and others. So what is mental resilience? This is specifically about the research behind mental resilience. So we know when the research first started, it was very much about kind of children that had specifically overcome adversity, or maybe had special educational needs or a disability, you know, those kind of real superhero children that had, you know, kind of got through whatever life threw at them. And then over the last kind of 15, 20 years or so, actually the research into mental resilience has really changed into that kind of daily, everyday life, messy, muddling through type of resilience. So what we now know is that, you know, to be mentally resilient is actually about being good enough. It's not being perfect. It's having a go at things, you know, being adaptable, changing directions when we need to, learning from mistakes and failing well. I mean, I love that phrase, failing well. I think the word failure comes with a lot of negative connotations, and, you know, fear. I think it can drive fear, and I think if we can teach kids how to fail well and teach them that failing is a learning opportunity, then it takes some of that fear away from it. Reaching out, impulse control, compassion, and self-efficacy. So having the belief that I can be effective in the moment, and that belief is wedded to reality. So this is a little bit which I found really interesting when I first kind of started learning about mental resilience and overall happiness and well-being. So as with any research, you know, there's loads of different opinions. Some people agree, some people disagree. And if someone says to you, is happiness and well-being worth teaching? Then if we take this bit of research, for example, so 50% of our overall happiness and well-being is preset. So when we talk about preset, we're talking about genetics, background, upbringing, that kind of optimism versus pessimism that's naturally embedded in us. And then 10% is down to circumstance. So the circumstances are things that is kind of out of our control and really hard for us to change, basically. So it could be something like COVID-19, or you know, maybe you have a disability. Those kind of things that are really hard for us to actually do anything about. That's 10%. And then we've got this 40%, which is intentional activity. So that's huge, right? That's 40% of our overall happiness and well-being is down basically in our control. So on one hand, you might think, wow, that's incredible. I've got so much control over my overall happiness and well-being. That's amazing. On the other hand, if you don't know how to look after your emotional well-being or how to improve your happiness, and you don't know the skills that sit behind it, that can be that 40% can seem really daunting and scary, because you know that's 40% that's in your control. And if you don't know what to do with that, that's quite daunting, right? So I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that the how-to bit is the bit where Bounce Forward come in. And that how-to bit ultimately gives you a lot more agency and control over that 40%, you know, which is why it's so important to teach the how-to. So, I mean, if someone asked me, is it worth teaching or learning, I would say absolutely. So here I was just going to take you through a bit about maybe the more focus on the kids that we talk about, and then also I'm just going to take you through one of the skills that that we teach. So the ages and stages for developing resilience. Sorry, my throat's a bit sore. So we know that resilience matters at all ages, but what this can do is help with our approach to it, and help us to think about where we might need to focus differently at different stages of life. So if we just start with newborn, for example, this is where at newborn stage, this is where you really matter. So you really need to focus on your own mental resilience and then creating that kind of stable, safe environment for them. And if we think about early years, so maybe age 4 to 8, that kind of age, you know, at this age, kids are like sponges, right? They're watching, mimicking everything that you're doing. So I'm sure we might all have a moment where, you know, we might remember a kid coming back to us with saying a phrase that sounds something like what might sound something like what we say, and we might not want them to say it, but because they're absolutely absorbing everything that you do. So on that basis, this is also the perfect stage to be modeling resilient behavior. You know, show them that you're failing and that you've overcome it. Provide opportunities for them to fail in a safe way, and you know, give them process praise on overcoming that failure. There's a really good opportunity during these years to do that. And then we have the adolescent teenagers, so maybe 10 to 14, you know, is really key to teach skills here. I think the window is definitely still open to be able to do that. Children are definitely still prepared to learn from you at this age, even though I think it can feel like the shutters are coming down a little bit. This is a time where it's really, really great if they're taught resilience at school, because typically at this age, teenagers can be less inclined to listen to their parents and more inclined to listen to other people around them. So, you know, especially as they start to develop kind of their own sense of self and their own independence, is really helpful if they're taught this at school at this point in their lives. And then you have let's say 14 plus, so late teens going into young adults. this stage is really all about the conversations that you're having, you know, what you talk about, really listening into what's going on for them. That can be hard because sometimes, you know, we're not going to like what we hear, but I think ultimately, you know, we'd always rather know what's going on for them than not. And then this is where your kind of adult level skills of knowing how to stay calm, stay non-judgmental, you know, really listening without necessarily having all of the answers. That's where those skills are going to come into play. So these are the psychological skills that we teach throughout our curriculum. So we have the kind of core skills here that start at upper primary age, go into lower secondary, and then we have the remaining skills that then develop on that throughout secondary. So I was going to just pick out one of them that I will take you through. So if we pick noticing the gremlins, and we call them gremlins in our thinking. So really this is thinking about kind of the link between what we think, how we feel, and how we behave. So if we take an activating event, so this is the kind of who, what, where, when, you know, facts of the situation, an event that causes a response, if you like. And what we used to think was that something happens and then that leads to a consequence, which is, you know, how we feel and how we behave. But then actually we thought, well, hold on. So something happens, something might happen to every one of us here, the exact same activating event. And actually how every single one of us might feel and behave could be completely different. So that doesn't really make sense. So then they started to look at the beliefs. So you got the A's, the B's, and the C's. So you got your activating event, the situation, and then your beliefs in the moment, which is what you think in that moment, which then lead to how we feel and how we behave. So what this tells us is actually, if I don't like how I'm feeling and behaving, I've got to go back to my beliefs and think about what I'm thinking in that moment, and can I change that? Can I change my beliefs in the moment to then ultimately change how I'm feeling and how I'm behaving? And also I think, you know, it gives us a really good insight into how each of us have different beliefs. Even though the situation might be the same, our beliefs might be different, leading to, you know, why we then might feel and behave in a different way. So this, you know, just using this as an example, we take this traffic jam as our activating event. You know, this is the facts of the situation is we are sitting in a traffic jam, and ultimately you might have one person in this car here who is feeling angry, honking their horn, can't believe this has happened to them. You've got someone in the car next to them who's thinking, oh, well, you know, I didn't know I was going to get this hour back in my day. Great, I'm going to sit back, relax, put some music on, listen to a podcast that I wanted to listen to. Like, great, loving life. The next person in the car behind you is worrying. You know, they're feeling anxious. And the point of this is that every one of these people are, you know, they're experiencing the same activating event, but their thoughts, their beliefs in the moment are different. So the person who's angry is going to be thinking, oh my God, I can't believe someone has caused this traffic jam. How dare they do this to me? And the person that is worrying is going to be thinking, oh, if I'm late again for work, you know, I might lose my job, and then what am I going to do? You know, so their thinking in the moment is different, which then leads to the behavior, you know, being different. So I just wanted to really finish on, you know, how this then builds our how understanding that skill, the ABC skill, builds compassion. And ultimately, I mean, what I would say is that firstly, unless we understand ourselves, we probably can't really understand other people. So I think it's really important for us to understand ourselves and what's going on for us first. Secondly, when we understand our own emotions, we're much more able to connect with others and tune into the emotions of others. And also by trying to understand the beliefs, so what someone is thinking, or so someone's beliefs behind you know, an emotional behavior, by trying to understand that, you're actively seeking, you know, to understand someone else's perspective, which goes back to the kind of flexible and realistic thinking competency about, you know, being open to other people's perspectives. And what I said a minute ago,
I think we may have lost Alicia just for temporarily, or else it's my internet. Did we lose you, Alicia? Are you back?
sorry,
Oh, great, great. No worries. I can hear you now.
You just said it's kicked me out. Right.
It's just testing your resilience, testing your mental resilience there, and your
Yeah.
ability to fail.
Am I back?
You're back. You're back, and we can hear you.
Cool. Yeah, so I was just going to finish off by saying that ultimately, you know, it allows us to recognize how someone else's beliefs can be different to ours, even though if we're experiencing the same situation. And ultimately, you know, that helps us to build compassion for other people.
Fantastic.
My screen seems to have frozen. Okay. So yeah, just coming to the end now. This is just a reading list of books that we at Bounce Forward you know, really recommend. I can send them around afterwards to the group. You know, feel free to note them down. But yeah, definitely recommend these books. And then just a finishing quote from Lucy Bailey, who is our founder and CEO. But you know, we need everyone's support basically to continue to make a difference in the world, especially, you know, we're really trying to shift the narrative at the moment from a mental health crisis to one of empowerment. You know, we really want to empower people to overcome this. So there's various ways that, you know, people can get involved and support Bounce Forward, and you know, I can follow up with more information on that afterwards. But that is it.
Thank you so much, Alicia, and also Bounce Forward actually for accepting the invitation to come to the EdNet forum. I'm definitely going to be looking for some extra brownie points for having one of the books on the list, Martin Seligman's Flourish, because I can see a lot of influence there as well in the sort of the from languishing to flourishing. But if I could just give a couple of observations, if that's okay, and then we can open the floor for as many questions as we can fit in the next. We have well over half an hour left, so so we've got a nice balance there between conversations. But from my insight, to learn a little bit more, and I don't know everything about Bounce Forward, but I've had an insight over the last year or so, and thanks to some of our partners actually who initially put me in touch with Bounce Forward. So Think Equal and Leslie particularly, I know there was a relationship and a partnership between Bounce Forward and Think Equal, which many people will be familiar with on this call, but it's another UK-based organization working in this area of social emotional learning for the younger audience, for early years. And I see some parallels certainly between your founder, Lucy Bailey, and Leslie as well. You know, two forces to be reckoned with who don't take no for an answer. And I think the story behind, you know, Lucy's story and her journey for me was quite an impactful one, and resonated because she's coming from a sort of a non-formal, informal, experiential learning background in youth work and social work, and brought that into the sort of formal education arena to be working. And I'm not sure the exact number, and I'll probably get it wrong, but I think it's around 14 or 15 years that Bounce Forward has been going. Maybe more than that, Alicia, you can correct me, but it's not a new organization. You've freshened things up quite a bit, but it's been going for some time. Before I forget, there is a podcast, and I've really enjoyed actually the podcast since it started about, I'd say 6 months, maybe 12 months ago. Your podcast. We can put that in the chat for people who want to listen. They're nice, short interviews with people around the world that are doing something similar to what I imagine, all aspiring to work towards. And Alicia was heavily involved in the podcast and setting that up. The other thing is I think what's different from some of the other programs that I've noticed, that many of us might be familiar with here within the education network, even, you know, compassionate integrity training and C-learning and Think Equal, they more or less have one training program, and it's for different audiences, but it's one training program that goes through their 10 skills or however amount of skills they have. With Bounce Forward, what I've learned is that you have many different training programs depending on the cohort you're working with. So one of the ones that I'm familiar with was navigating transitions, for example, for children or young people that are switching from, you know, primary school to to second level school, and I know it's called different things in different parts of the world, or transitions even within that, you know, second level to university even. So that's one course. Another course is about raising resilience, and it's called such. So there's a whole suite of trainings that will be for the cohort. So whether that's parents or caregivers, guardians, educators, and even older young people. So that's an observation from my point. And you might want to stop me and speak to that at any
No,
stage.
I mean, yeah, the only thing I was going to say was, you know, definitely. So I think our work, the core of our work has always been the education, and then in the education sector. And then I think when COVID hit, you know, the parent work was so imperative, and, you know, we had all these parents that were at home, you know, with their children and just, you know, wanted some support basically. So we started with Raise Resilience, which was our first, it was kind of our core parent program, which is a six 1 hour sessions. We started with that, and then from there we then developed Navigating Transitions, as Shane just said, which is aimed around, you know, supporting parents and children through times of change and uncertainty. And then also we have Anxiety Unraveled, which is a 3 1 hour sessions, or kind of, I guess, understanding anxiety from a perspective that, you know, anxiety can be a normal response to some situations. You know, it's a normal bodily response, but how do we have some kind of coping mechanisms that we can try, you know, practical kind of skills that we can use in the moment to help us. So yeah, I mean, all 3 of our parent programs, I think since March 2020, we've trained about 13,500 parents. So, you know, it's been super popular. And then in schools, we have a program for primary schools called Teach Mental Resilience, and a program for secondary schools called Healthy Minds. So Healthy Minds has been born out of the big research project that we done a few years back. So kind of was a huge research project with about 11,000 students over 5 years. So it's the, you know, the largest study that's been done of that kind in that sector.
11,000 students over 5 years.
Yeah,
that's a fairly big cohort as well. That research is all available as well on your website.
Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, I can follow up with links to all of that research, but, you know, the impact was amazing. So in terms of health outcomes, it saw kind of huge impact on like life satisfaction, physical health, emotional health, externalizing behaviors, and a lot of them are kind of health outcomes that leave, you know, long-arm outcomes into adulthood. So that was a really big part of the research. And then on the academic side, it came out as neutral. So what that meant was that we could take away, you know, 1 hour a week away from traditional academic subjects to teach this stuff, and it didn't have any negative impact on, you know, academic results, which is what you know, I mean, it's amazing. It's what we wanted. I think it was the first time that the Education Endowment Foundation, who funded the project, had neutral academic outcomes. So that was amazing for us.
Brilliant. And there's 3 more observations, and then I'm opening the floor, if that's okay, and I'll stick to the 3, because I think they apply to some folks in this call, and certainly those who might be watching the video as well. I think your facilitator process, or the training for facilitators, is a really interesting one. I've taken it myself, but it's not an orthodox type of training where you necessarily need to take a 10-week course and then you submit, you know, curriculum development, whatever it might be. It's from my experience, you see the content, you contact facilitators, or if you are a facilitator, and there's many on this call, and if you're interested, you have this relationship where you just try it out, you give it a go, and it's quite a short process from what I've experienced myself. So I think that was interesting. The second thing is there's a lot of personal testimonies of the folks that I've got to know, which for me speak to the success and the impact already of what Bounce Forward are doing. And I'm not a personal promoter of Bounce Forward, but I think the interesting stories are, for example, one of the people I've got to know, he was a vice principal of a big school in London, or close to London, I think it is in London actually, that took on the program, took on all of the Bounce Forward programs. It became so successful in the school that he actually resigned as vice principal and is now working full-time for Bounce Forward to bring this to other parts of the world as well. So there's definitely a lot of passionate people that see the worth in what you're doing. And my final observation is that, and I think this applies to all of the organizations that are connected here in this call, is that the challenge of sustainability is always a huge one. Even if the products are good and even if the it's working, the impact from that research is very, very clear. But how do we keep ourselves sustainable? And it's something that the Charter, I'm sure, are challenged by as well from time to time. So I'd love to maybe know more about it, but also explore the public and private education sectors, which both are being targeted, but also the public and private funding. So government funding, and then I believe you're funded partially, or you have sponsorship from the likes of Accenture, and there might be Britvik was the other organization that are being targeted. So you're also providing training within that sector using the same content. And so it's just an interesting model, and I think it could be explored a little bit more. So Alicia, if you want to touch on those points, and then we open up to everybody else. And Jackie, who's not a million miles away down the road from where you're at the moment, Alicia, Jackie, you're more than welcome. We're just getting into the Q&A, and you'll have the rest recorded on the video as well.
So just on the it's something that we recently took on as corporate sponsorship, maybe a year or so ago, because ultimately funding in the education sector is tough, right? And schools, the budgets are going down and down and down, getting tighter and tighter. So it wasn't the lack of schools wanting to do wanting to teach this stuff, but I think finding the budget, even though by the way, our costs are very, very low for what schools get, but we had to come up with some new creative ideas about how we get some money and ultimately provide this stuff to schools, because at the end of the day our aim is to get this out to as many kids as possible, and how can we do that? So corporate sponsorship has been an interesting route. It's been something new for us. As Shane said, we've got a partnership with Britvik, who are soft drinks manufacturer. They in terms of an organization have done some wellbeing roadshows for their employees across all different sites, and I went along to them roadshows to tell employees about Bounce Forward and who we are. And what they done was gave their employees an opportunity to nominate a school of their choice, which has worked really nicely, because one, employees love how they're thinking, how can they get involved? It might not be that they can come and be a trainer or deliver a session. It might not be in their remit, but how can they contribute and get involved? So nominating a school of their choice. And then also we're just about to go into a big fundraising campaign with them that's going to run from Mental Health Awareness Week in May through to World Mental Health Day in October. And that is, fundraising so that we can then go and provide all of the schools with these programs, free of charge. So it's really, it's an interesting model for us, because, it removes that barrier when you're speaking to a school, any kind of financial barrier. And like Shane said, we've also then supplied programs for their employees as well. So whether that be a program for parents, or it might just be a program for employees thinking about their own resilience, and so there's so many opportunities to kind of give back in a way, to bring them on board. But I can share more information. We've got like a corporate sponsorship pack, if I can share that afterwards, maybe.
Fantastic. Thanks, Alicia. So maybe in order for the last two people that arrived in, because everybody else had a chance just to say where they were and maybe their little reconnection to education or their organization. But Andrea, we didn't give you a chance, and Jackie's arrived in. So if you'd like to unmute and just introduce yourself, that'd be great, please.
Yes, good morning. My name is Andrea Monsanto, and I am in Monterrey, Mexico. I work with Tec de Monterrey in the wellness area, and I'm glad to be here for the first time. Thank you, Shane and Merida, for inviting me.
Thanks, Andrea.
Nice to meet you.
And Jackie, is it up the road or down the road? It's up the road, isn't it?
Where are you, Alicia?
I'm in Hertfordshire.
So you're south. I'm in Nottingham.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and just listening to you, we've got so much in common. We do need to speak. I know Shane's already tried to connect us or sent me your details. But anyway, I am Jackie Wilson, co-founder of Positively Empowered Kids. We're a social enterprise in Nottingham, focusing around early intervention and prevention of mental ill health. And we do that in many fun ways, including a festival, which I'd love to get you there, Alicia. Yeah, so we do, again, similar, we do corporate stuff, we do school programs, workshops, but for us it's more about a collaboration of different providers coming together to create a hub of expertise. That's kind of overall roughly what we do. I shan't go on too long, it's just an intro.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Jackie. And I can see people smiling here as well, because when we all get a chance to introduce, we know that some of these connections work, and we know that from EdNet forums in the past, from what I've heard, amazing connections have stemmed from these. So it's exciting just to be part of that and hear it going on. But I can definitely see the connections there as well. And from what I've talked to Andrea as well already this week, there's connections outside of the UK as well that can be made and on the different levels of education. So it's open shop, it's open conversation now. So anybody, if you want to raise your hand or just unmute and ask any questions and comments. Marlene.
How did you know that I was trying to
Listen, we're getting to know each other really well.
and raise my hand? No, I was just wondering, Alicia, and Jackie too. Last year we had Wendy Elliott. Do people know her?
Yeah, we've met her, Wendy.
Yeah, and Alicia, I don't know if you know her.
No.
She's probably also in your backyard. And she runs the Flourish Project.
Okay.
And so I'll just put her website here for you. And if you go to our archive, you'll see information from the EdNet forum that she presented. And it's very much along the line. I know that all of us have programs that we can say are along the line, but the more that we talk with one another, the more that we find that we have in common. But the question that I was going to ask you is, I'm trained as an Adlerian psychologist in another life, and one of the things that I see is that there's a lot of Adlerian theory in what you just presented, and I wonder if you, I know that you take from a lot of different philosophies and theories, but I just wonder if you've ever come across some of the work of the Adlerian groups, like with Dinkmeyer and Dreikers, and that I think they would really support everything that you're doing.
Yeah, I mean I personally haven't. I'm not sure if I asked Lucy that question, maybe she would have a different answer. But yeah, I mean, I would love to have a look at, at some of the work and see, have a read about it.
I'll put some of the books in the chat. The one I love best is Children, the Challenge, so by Dreikers.
And certainly the Stanford research in the 1980s and 90s, it still seems to be heavily influencing, from what I can see at least, the content, and it's been evolving for over some time. But so the CBT and the whole growth mindset as opposed to fixed mindset, and these are some of the key components. And Alicia alluded to it really well, the failure and the embracing of mistakes and failure as I love to get that quote in from Samuel Beckett, the Irish writer. I know Barbara's a writer here as well, be familiar with what Beckett was talking about in education as well, so many years ago, but it's refreshing to hear organizations not only talking about it, but introducing it in curriculum as well, and alongside curriculum, that we need to teach our young people to embrace failure.
Yeah.
Thanks for that addition, Marlon. So we can remember to save the chat, and we'll try and get the podcast into the chat as well. So I can see your hand up, Donna. Sorry, didn't get to you.
That's all right. No sorries. We're all here. That was brilliant. Thank you. Hitchin. That's where I was staying last time I was in England. Hitchin. Yeah. So lovely little cathedral there. It's not really a cathedral, but a little beautiful church. anyhow, I loved everywhere I go. Rian Eisler's partnership language comes up. It runs through my blood. So I don't know if you know who Rian Eisler is, but she talks about the concepts of domination and partnership. So we've grown up in the last 2,500 years under the energy of domination, and we're moving out of domination. That's why the world looks a little crazy right now, as we're trying to figure out this chrysalis thing between existing for 2,500 years as caterpillar and then moving into this more elevated stage of our butterfly humanity, right? And so I loved that you reframed the failing well to well, right? And Rian would, or I would even go as far to say that we are learning well, that making a mistake is not a failure, it's part of the process, right? So explaining to children that shame, right? It's like taking the shame out of having an experience. I am learning from experience, not learning from my mistakes. Because how many times did Edison make the light bulb? 150 times before he failed or something like that, or before he succeeded. Oh, that word came out of my mouth. Did you hear that?
I'm really sorry, Donna, to interrupt, but let's give due credit here to Nikola Tesla. And
Pardon. Yes, thank you. Exactly. Thank you. I did not have enough coffee this morning. I'm trying to get myself out of bed. Yes, Tesla. In fact, let's forget about Edison. Anyhow, yeah, so I see your program beautifully married together with the ideals, the language and narratives of, I was in the grocery store and I was converging into one lane with a woman and her young daughter. And she's like, wait, let her go by. And I said, oh no, there's plenty of room for both of us. Our vastness is not contained in an aisle in the grocery store, right? And the mom looked at me and the little girl looked at me with like heart eyes. And she's like, wait, this lady's talking about my vastness, right? And I said, go be vast. And I said, wait, you already are vast. You don't have to be anything that you already are. So teaching these kids that, aren't you a star that just dropped out of the cosmos? And don't you have a million things to teach me too? I cannot wait to know what you have brought to Earth that I don't yet know and that we have not yet explored. So in the positively empowered, right? Like, wow, reminding them that they are not the story of domination and that they are the seeds that are actually allowed to cast off any containment of domination and stretch into partnership. What's it look like? Maybe they don't know. Maybe we don't know. Maybe we all co-created together from the grandmothers to the kindergarteners, because I'm here for it. So I think it's brilliant work that you're doing. And how are you finding it received? And are you also finding it outside of the UK received?
So received really well. I mean, I think in schools, I think the teachers love teaching this stuff, right? So they love it. They love, we always have feedback from teachers saying it reminds them of why they got into teaching in the first place, which, is beautiful. And I think, so, they love that. I think it really strengthens relationships between students and teachers, definitely teaching this stuff. And also I think, bringing that discussion-based activities into the classroom, right? So that we're not just standing at the front telling kids to memorize something. We're bringing that discussion into the classroom. We're teaching them how to listen to different perspectives and see different perspectives, and then be able to discuss and debate that in a healthy way. Super important. So yeah, I think it's so well received. There isn't, there's not a school that takes this on and regrets taking it on. It's they absolutely love it. I think like I mentioned earlier, I think there's been barriers just more with budgets and stuff like that, and also so everything that we so Healthy Minds, for example, is completely mapped out to statutory requirements within education, which is great, because that means schools in that sense that's ticked a box, and that's fine. They don't have to worry about that. And Healthy Minds is lovely. It's kind of designed in developmental, like spiral approach, you know, to adolescent development. So the learning kind of develops over time. It takes on topics that I think speak to what they're going through at that stages of their life. It brings in topics from other areas. So we cover things like, you know, relationships, consent. We talk about kind of social, not just social media, but media in general, and how that kind of blurring of boundaries between online and real life. You know, we really talk about mental illness, but in terms of understanding the brain and actually what's going on in the brain at that time. So it's, you know, brings in lots of lovely different topics, and yeah, kids love it.
That's brilliant. You know, I had written down the fact that fundraising for education. It's like, why? We're not fundraising. We're not fundraising for military, right? And I mean, that's a common, that's not a new thought, right? But the more we begin to shift the paradigm with the children, the more our society shifts, and the grasp of domination has got oil on its hand. It can't stay for long. So bless you for everything that you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Donna.
I had, as I was listening to that, I was wondering, do you take on bullying and peer pressure and aggression or aggressive feelings? Just could you say a word about that?
So we have kind of resources that we release, if you like, throughout the year on top of the curriculum that might speak to, you know, different hot topics, if you like, you know. So we might do a resource around bullying, for example, but it will kind of back that with, you know, different communication techniques, and, you know, so we'll always refer back to kind of the core skills that we're teaching throughout. I think aggression and that will feed into the whole emotions, you know, part of the curriculum, learning about our emotions, how to regulate them, harness them, understanding them. So, you know, emotions aren't just happy, sad and angry. You know, we've got like hundreds of different emotions we can actually feel, and what does that feel like for us? So yeah, I was, you know, we don't have bullying, for example, we don't have a specific lesson within Healthy Minds about bullying, but I do think a lot of the skills, so we have like an assertive communication technique skill that is taught, and, you know, that definitely, we know of like pastoral teams that have used that in situations, you know, one-on-one with students that might have experienced bullying. So yeah, that's kind of the beauty of a lot of the resources. They're very, you know, adaptable, that they, as much as they're used in a classroom setting, they can be taken and used in a one-on-one, you know, setting and applied to a specific situation if they need to be.
Thanks, Barbara. I wonder, Alicia, if you might be able to speak to, and we can wait for more questions as well, and it's okay to have a bit of silence as well as I'm learning. But in terms of the membership, like you have a package now that you would offer schools, and they become a member. So yearly they can get other training and they can any updates. But that's sort of come from local council funding originally to sustain to a membership model. But could you speak to that maybe for a second?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So it's a really recent development for us as a charity. I think, you know, let's go back, I don't know, even just a year ago, we had kind of one foundation training, if you like, for all teachers, whether you're a primary teacher or a secondary teacher. And actually what we wanted to do was kind of separate that out, so have a really clear program for a primary and a really clear program for secondary. So what we have now is, as Shane said, a members area. So if you're a school, you have a login to your members area. All of the foundation training is pre-recorded and on there, so you know, as many staff as possible can access that and which is great, because again, I would say probably beforehand schools would get 1 or 2 members of staff trained, you know, purely for budget reasons. So actually you end up having teachers probably teaching the stuff that haven't done the training, which, you know, okay, but it's not how we would recommend you do it. You know, the training at the adult level is super important. So that's kind of taken that barrier away, which is great. And yeah, so as part of the membership, they get, so all of their training, they get access to in the members area. It has all of their teaching and learning resources kind of embedded in there. So they, you know, if they're in the classroom, they just click go and it's on the screen, which is lovely and easy for them. And then every month we host webinars for our members. So and we have like a guest speaker. So this week we had Dr. John Coleman, who is a psychologist and specialist in kind of adolescent brain development. And we covered the topic of sleep and the sleep with the teenage brain development and the impact that has on learning, which is super interesting. Like, I actually learned loads of stuff, you know, just how, even down to how, you know, how melatonin in the brain is released in a teenager versus an adult and things like that, you know, really interesting. So yeah, that all kind of comes as part of the package as a membership. So for a secondary school, it's £1,470 for a year, and for a primary school is £359 for a year. Yeah, for a year. So, you know, we're not talking huge masses of money for you know, for what they get.
And how's that going, Alicia, so far?
Yeah, really well. The feedback's been really good. And, you know, obviously in terms of, you know, logistically for us getting that members area set up, it's, you know, obviously it's a bit of a learning curve for us, and, you know, we're still developing it and getting, you know, we want feedback obviously, and we want to keep improving it over time. But I think the flexibility that it gives schools to be able to give, you know, one login to all members of staff and say, go and do your training in, you know, and it's not, you're having to take them out for a day and get cover staff and things like that, you know, that's been a real benefit. And also just give them an area where they know that, you know, in the classroom they can log in and select whichever lesson they're teaching and it's there. Whereas before, you know, it was kind of, we would leave them to download their files and, you know, do as they please with them, if you like, which, you know, I just think we've kind of simplified it for them, which is, yeah, it's been really well received.
Great.
And I think also just to say, you know, when we host the webinars, for example, we give, you know, it's very much like this setup, and it gives schools a chance to connect with each other, which has been really nice. And you get, you know, schools from different parts of the country connecting with each other, finding out, you know, I think just hearing another teacher speak about something that you might be having the same problem with and connecting about that, you know, you're not on your own. So yeah, that's been really nice as well. It's kind of built a nice community around it.
Alicia, you've provided me a great segue as well to do a little bit of a promo for some of the things that we have within the charter, because there is we've developed, and only this week in conversation with Merida and Marlin and our partners in India as well, there's a map that we have, which is Schools Collaborating for Compassion, and it's doing exactly what you described there. So schools around the world, so beyond, you know, whatever borders we're within at the moment, to connect up, that it might be doing similar type of work or maybe doing very different work, but it's interesting for other schools in other parts of the world to learn from and get inspired. And so we can certainly share the link to this. It's a free website. It's a free map that you can just sign up to, register your school, and then, you know, take the organizations out of the way, and schools can contact other schools. And it's, you know, I love the concept. I love the simplicity of it. So it has been going, but it's revamped now as well. So from, I believe, Merida, correct me if I'm wrong, from sort of this week, schools can now log in and just put their details in and get that out there. So we can put that in the chat as well.
That's really nice.
They can allow for a little patience if something goes wrong, but it's ready.
A bit of a compassion.
I wanted to share with you as well, Alicia, that we have two kinds of maps. The one that Shane and Merida were referring to, which is Schools Connecting with Schools, but we have another map of co-creators, and we launched it last September. And the idea here is that people really come forth and say what their passion is, be it in education or environment or any of our 12 sectors that we have. And it's an opportunity for people to actually make direct contact with one another. And one of the things we're trying to do is encourage organizations like your own, that you take this map, put it on your own site, because there's, even though, you know, we started working on it, we really want to gift it to the world, so that we can have millions of people on this map, and you can zone in on the street in which you live, going to a song from a musical, but nonetheless, really find people and you can contact them. I know yesterday, after we had a call with our friends in Canada, you know, two people wrote to me and said, can I make contact with somebody I just met? And it's like, there's no need for us to be the middle person. People can go and do it themselves. And I know that Jackie has participated, and other people here, but please take the map and run with it. And Andrea, I think that it would be great if you could do the same thing in Mexico. There's a Spanish version as well. And one request that I have, because you said that you have this packet, which you share with businesses. I'd love to see that as soon as possible, please. Just because we're, you know, we're on a venture right now ourselves of doing something somewhat similar. So we would really appreciate that. The other thing, and we'll let Shane and Merida help you with it, is our wisdom book, which are wonderful stories that you've experienced through the work that you've done, that we can put in the wisdom book, really short, couple paragraphs, where people could actually learn from one another and duplicate the good works that are out there.
It's a lovely idea.
And I think you've got some ready-made testimonies even on your website there as well that could just flow into that, and we can send that energy to other parts of the world as well. And Andrea was mentioned there as well, but I'm just, it's a thought that I have from, you know, Hertfordshire to Tech Monterrey in Mexico. Although the content is there and it's sort of targeting parents, guardians, and teachers, there's no reason, at least from what I can see, why, you know, students, or particularly trainee teachers in universities, some Andrea's working with a wellbeing program in Tech Monterrey, but I think the main sort of cohort of general population of students that are in university, I can see them really benefiting from the likes of the courses that you have already, and, you know, just broadening that window from UK to a global scale, because the content, like Marlon said, it's a combination of a lot of content from different parts of the world, but it's working, and so why not bring it into the likes of the wellbeing program in Tech Monterrey? Although, Andrea, you've got quite a lot going on at the moment yourself.
I mean, we do have we have programs for trainee teachers, and, you know, we have a university program. So I don't know, anything that I can send over, that maybe I can just send over some links to you, Shane, and you can share it with the wider group or something. But yeah, because obviously I haven't mentioned everything that we do today because we'd be here for ages, but there are, you know, there's various programs. So I'll just send some links, and then if anyone wants to chat about it further, we can jump on a call.
Fantastic.
This is wonderful. I love the organicness of your program. I think there's so much that sometimes that maybe that it's that domination thing that put us into boxes and structures and very specific ones, and the way that you've actually made something so organic, so adaptable, so bringing in from different areas, and how do we integrate all that up and think, as Charter for Compassion, we tried to do the same thing, not be too structured, but have things that feed each other so that everybody can grow and flourish at the same time.
Yeah, it's exactly that. You know, it's throughout secondary school. It's how do we feed things in that it continues to build the learning and re-emphasize the skills. But, you know, we have to also be aware that actually the topic that you're going to, I don't know, talk about at age 14 might be different at age 16. So, you know, how do we feed that all in. And even with primary schools, we adapted the program, and we actually took out the word lessons and we actually changed it to modules, because we really wanted to change the idea that it had to be delivered in this set 6 lessons, if you like. Whereas actually, you know, if one of the activities as given this really great discussion, and like, we don't want you to cut that short because you want to fit it into 6, you know, we want you to flow with that discussion because it's so important for the kids.
Yeah, and it's nice that it's what was I going to say? Within that integration, there's also what is happening in the present. So
Yeah.
sometimes now when something is too structured, we're learning something that's not useful for us at this precise moment. Maybe a new war has started somewhere, or a new wellness project is starting somewhere that can inspire people, and we're not introducing them. So well, just congratulations for everything you're doing. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Almost
You
like-
know, I just thought of another thing. We've had, again, if you go back to our archives, Loving Classroom, which
okay.
really, do you know them?
Yeah.
Yeah, because there is a UK branch now, and I think that they're really trying very hard, I think,
Yeah.
to make contact with other groups as well.
Yeah, I think Bernardo's in UK and potentially in Ireland, but potentially in the UK are also taking Loving Classroom on as an NGO as well to share that. But there's so much, and to Meredith's point as well, it's almost like permaculture for children's education, social emotional learning, or eco restoration, because it's not ours or it's not theirs. It's how we can get it out there and share it and take it on board. So to that, my last question, and I will properly doing the veil, as we say in Irish, close my mouth after this. If somebody in this group or somebody watching it on the video afterwards was interested to become a facilitator or to take on the courses and curriculum in their local communities in different parts of the world, what might be the process? And I'm sorry if there isn't a process, maybe we could just be contacting you to let or express an interest, but do you have that? Great.
Yeah, I think as simple as, you know, getting in touch. I can put my email here in the chat, and then yeah, as simple as getting in touch, and you know, we'll have a conversation and yeah, go from there. I mean, we love people getting involved, we love collaboration, so you know, we love to talk to especially groups like this that, you know, we're all trying to achieve, you know, here or there the same thing. So you know, it's really nice to be connected to everyone.
Great.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Alicia. And thanks to you for being present with us and sharing. Like you said, you can't get everything in 70 or 90 minutes, but you've certainly covered a huge amount here today. And also to your organization for the work you're doing and for being present. So, Gorev Mila Maigut, as we'd say in Irish, one day before our national holiday, St. Patrick's Day. So happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody as well.
Enjoy the celebrations.
Thanks, Alicia.
Thank you.
Thanks to everybody else for being here.
Thanks,
Make sure you stay in the
everyone.
chat. There's a
Marilyn, do you have any announcements?
Pardon me?
I wonder if Marilyn would like to make some announcements about Global Read's future EdNets.
Wow, sure. I'm not even sure. I know that our next Global Read is April 5th on Golden Rule Day, and it's on Golden Ruleism and the booklet. So please come along for that. I think the following month, we're hopeful that it will be the Manifesto for Women with Jennifer Nadel. So that just keep track in terms of the homepage. Two things that obviously are happening. One, in May, we will be launching along with folks from Age Nation, their program. Again, we're having the two people who are the producers of Age Nation in the US chat today. So they'll be talking about that. It's not only a US venture, it'll be in all of compassionate countries and communities of the Charter for World of Compassion. So that is something to watch for. And then we have and this just dawned on me, Andrea and Alicia, certainly Jackie, I don't think you participated in Crossing Borders either, have you? We have been working with Arndt Watschker from Crossing Borders. He's the person who founded it. We are going to be offering a series of crossing borders for our partners so that they in turn can find ways that they might want to offer it to their constituencies. So we're fairly certain that we will be starting our next group early in April, but we will be running these throughout the year. So Alicia and Andrea, if you want to go to Crossing Borders and put in Arndt's name, or maybe you can find it and put it in the chat, because sometimes there's another Crossing Borders and you can get mixed up.
He's based in Edinburgh, is that right, in the UK?
No, well, it's somewhere north of Edinburgh. He's originally from East Berlin, but he's an incredible product that he has. So I think that would be something that we could certainly offer to everyone who's here. And we're moving on in the charter with at least 12 of our lead volunteers and our staff for Train the Trainer. And it doesn't take long, but you can see that if you watch a few of the videos that he has for training purposes, they're really skillfully done. He's a filmmaker by trade. You know, please be in touch with us about those, or if you're interested, then we'll make certain you get on the list for having the experience and hopefully maybe thinking about Train the Trainer. I think it'd be great, Alicia, for your work, but especially Andrea as well in working with young people. And they use a platform which our people haven't really experienced it yet, but it's Cisco WebEx, the people who founded Zoom, and they have recreated another platform, and they say it's kind of like their redemption for finding Zoom. It's really a wonderful platform, and they use that. What a nice looking dog you have there.
Yeah, everybody's zoning in here. Beautiful.
He's a very huggable dog. He likes a lot of cuddles.
Lovely.
Okay, so
Thanks,
that's it.
Gwen, for that. And so save the chat, folks, because there's more things going in, more email addresses and websites, and we can continue sharing as well. So the links to the podcast.
Shane, will you be able to share this chat with me, or should I copy it now?
If you can copy it, great, because I'm copying it to my best ability. But if something happens, make sure you have it straight.
I add it to the, I sometimes add
great.
it, and I can add it to the recording when I send the recording out.
It comes out automatically, Shane, when you
And
get
it comes out
recording,
automatically.
in the file, it's
There
there.
we go. We're zooming. We're Zoom experts at this point. My last, not a point. It's not a question. It's a point. But the Education Institute as well within the charter. There's no reason why I couldn't see, you know, raise resilience, navigating transitions. These types of training programs could easily be facilitated live like this, but within the Education Institute, and I think it would go down really well personally on a global scale. So that's something we can be in touch with as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Great. Thanks a million, folks. Thank you, Alicia. Thanks, Bands Forward.
Thanks so much.
See you all soon.
Thank you. It's
Lovely
lovely
to
to
meet
see you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.